Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is the second in the series of webinars we'll be running this year. And this one was a bit of a wild card. It was something that came up in response to all the findings that all the details and the poor advice, the poor behaviour that we've seen coming out of the Hayne Royal Commission into banking and financial services. So effectively, I was horrified actually to read and hear about some of the things that had gone on. And what I was most concerned about is that people are still looking for advice, but the problem is at the moment, as a result of that, they don't really know where to go. So what I want to do with this is basically to help people to find an advisor, effectively, someone that they can trust, someone that's going to work for them, and basically, if they need advice, to have a way of going and finding that. So that's what this is all about. So, pardon me. So what we'll do, I'm going to share my screen now, and there's a presentation. Now, this is being recorded as well, so you will be able to watch it back at a later stage if you want to. It'll be uploaded onto our website, and there's some tools and things like that that we'll share with you towards the end of it as well. And these will be available on the website too. So with all of that, let me just organise things here, and we will kick off. There we go. Let's try this again. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to. All right. So as I said, how to find the right financial advisor. Okay. So the agenda we've got for today is a bit of an introduction. How did we get here? What are the key problems? What do you need? And how do you find this? And then we'll wrap up and look at where you go from here. So a bit of background on myself. So I've been providing financial advice for over 20 years. I think it's up to nearly 22 years these days. And I set up Knightswood House, my business, or what became Knightswood House. That was set up in early 2002. And basically it was designed to be able to work with individuals and their families, and to provide me with the flexibility of running my own business, and to be able to do the right thing by clients. So that's the background there. For those of you who are coming to the business from a running or endurance sports perspective, my background in that is I've been running for about 9 years, and I love going and pushing myself and competing in marathons around the world and doing things like that. So I'm a crazy runner, and I love helping people go and do those things. And that's a bit of the backstory. So the business has grown. We've now got a number of people working for us. I'm the only one that provides advice, though, but we have people who look after portfolio management and the administration, marketing, compliance, all those sorts of things. So there is a team that stands behind me as well. So how did we get here? And as I mentioned to start with, I suppose the key catalyst for this was the Royal Commission into Banking and Financial Services, or the Hayne Royal Commission. And what we've seen is basically stories emerging, or cases have emerged that have implicated the big banks and AMP. And there's been a number of shocking things. So, we've witnessed Rowena Raw, who's the lady you can see pictured on the screen there, and she has been able to bring a scalpel to the inquiry, and the things that have been uncovered and the admissions she's been able to get from the witnesses who've been called has been incredible. So, as I said, The concern that I've got is this is looking at a number of poor issues, and there's no way of hiding that. It's been bad for the people who've been affected, for the clients who've been affected. It's been terrible for the reputation of the industry. But what it also doesn't account for is that this really is the poor end of the spectrum that you're seeing. And there are a lot of advisors out there who are working for their clients and who are doing the right thing, providing really good advice, and are making a significant difference in people's lives. So what I want to do is try and help you to find those people, so that you do have someone that you can go and work with, if that's if you do need that advice. So what are the key problems? I mean, look, we all know that finances are complicated. We've only got to look back just over 12 months ago when we saw the introduction of new superannuation rules, and that's complicated things even more. And it really is, or it can be, really difficult to wrap your head around, particularly when you've got time-critical decisions that need to be made. So, look, anyone who's well educated, who's bright, and who's done well, throughout their lives in other areas, they're certainly more than capable of understanding this and making decisions around it. The big question is do they have the time to bring themselves and their level of knowledge up to the level that it needs to be? And are they comfortable taking on all the responsibilities for that? Because the stakes are high, and we're all responsible for our own and our family's financial ship, if you want to put it in those terms. And there really isn't much of a safety net when things go wrong. If you've been quite successful, you've done well, and you're looking at a level of income, and if things go poorly, that drops down to kind of an age pension level of income in retirement, then there can be a very big disparity there if things do go wrong and don't work out the way you want. So that's what I mean by the stakes being increasingly high. It wasn't that long ago when everyone had, those people who were lucky enough to have superannuation had a defined benefit. And what they basically said was, on retirement, you'll get 2/3 of your final average salary paid for the rest of your life, indexed to inflation. And there was no risk to that. Senior public servants, people who worked for organisations like Telstra, Australia Post, Qantas, and a whole bunch of big employers all enjoyed the benefits of these. But over the last 20 odd years, we've seen a move away from that to one of defined contributions, which is where employers have mandated contributions that they need to make to super. And then you and I are responsible for the growth on that, and ensuring that we accumulate enough funds to basically do the things that are important to us, and ultimately to be able to support ourselves when we can no longer work, or when we decide we've had enough work. So, like I say, unfortunately, it's only becoming more rather than less complicated. And along with that, many of us have got less free time to manage our finances. We live in a situation where we are constantly on. We're always connected to devices, and the working day is stretched longer. We may not work as at the same level throughout that. There'll be peaks and troughs, but it seems to go over a broader period of time. And when you accompany that with family responsibilities, and particularly for people like me, where you're trying to train for and compete in different endurance sports events, that takes up a lot of time as well. So you're trying to cram more and more into the same fixed amount of time, and ultimately something's got to give. And so that's a concern that a lot of people have, and a problem that a lot of people are experiencing. And the other thing is look, the money can basically cause stress and can be a big contributor to relationship issues. And when things go wrong, can be a big contributor to relationship breakdowns. So, being able to to get assistance with that and to make sure that things are on track can be a big source of comfort for people, and can make a significant difference in their lives. As I said, so good financial advice can solve many of these problems, and can ultimately make life easier. And it can effectively be like a safety net. The problem is, though, is that the cost of bad advice can actually be greater than the cost of doing nothing. So we've seen from some of those cases, people are in a significantly worse situation as a result of receiving poor advice. So you need to protect yourself against that, and you need to ensure that that doesn't happen to you. The other thing is that ASIC has run a number of studies, and what they've found is that it can actually be difficult for people to distinguish between good and bad advice. There's what's called an information asymmetry, where someone who works within the industry, someone who is a financial advisor, a financial professional, has a much higher level of knowledge than a layperson, someone who works outside of that. And it can, as a result, things can sound good when they aren't necessarily so. And so that's what I mean by things can be presented in such a way that it actually makes intuitive sense and sounds good, but it may not. That may not be the case. And so, like I say, it can be hard to distinguish and to determine what is actually good advice and what's not. And the other thing is, there's no simple way to identify a good advisor. So we've seen poor advice from people who are employed by the big banks. We've seen poor advice from people who are independently licensed and who run their own business. But also what we've seen is that there is good advice in all of these places as well. So you can't simply look at someone and say, on the basis of how they're employed or how they're remunerated or anything like that, that's a good way of distinguishing that. We've seen people who've appeared in the press, who write and publish regular columns in prominent newspapers and appear on TV as finance commentators. We've seen them caught up in this and being exposed for having done the wrong thing as well. So, profile and the prestige that goes along with that isn't necessarily a way of identifying a source of good advice either. So I would say there's no simple way to do that. So how do you start is the question. Where do you go to try and find what you need? I suppose the first question that you need to ask is, look, do you actually need a financial planner, or do you just need a financial plan? And that's it might seem like semantics, but often, or I suppose in some cases, if you're not dealing with a particularly complicated situation, you may just need some initial advice to help get your head around things and to help you get on track and work out what you should be doing. And then you can go and manage that yourself. So, like I say, there may not actually be the case that you do need a financial planner. And increasingly, and we're going to see more of it, I think, there is software and there are other applications that can basically help you to work through this. There's an application that I'm looking at the moment that caters to all these basic levels and helps people to understand, who are particularly people who are just starting out with things. Look, these are the things that you really need to consider and check off on, and these are kind of the building blocks for your financial security. And you don't need an advisor to tell you these things, but you need someone to. Things like making sure you've got a cash reserve, making sure if you've got personal debt, credit card debt and things like that, that you pay that off very quickly, and try not to accumulate debt there. Things like insurances, and so emergency provisions in case something goes wrong, that you and your family will be looked after. Things like estate planning, wills and so forth, so that if something does happen to you, that your affairs will be looked after the way that you want them to be, rather than being left as a mess for someone else to come along and clean up. These are all pretty simple things, but they're the basic building blocks. Making additional contributions to super can be a good idea as well, depending on your circumstances. And so, like I say, there are tools available that can help you to work through these and help you to determine an appropriate pathway, and importantly, an order to actually go and tick them off in. So depending on your circumstances, you may not need that. If your situation is more complicated, then you may need some more advice than what this can offer. But it is important to be aware that those things are available. So if you do need financial advice, though, I suppose the first thing to determine is, what sort of advice are you looking for? Is it just strategic advice? That's where, as we spoke about in the previous slide, it's what direction do you need to go in? In some cases, it might be, do you have enough to be able to stop work? Have you accumulated enough funds that you're in a situation where you can't run out of money? If even if you do all the things that you want to be able to do. That's strategic advice. There's no product advice associated with that. And that may be something that you need. Do you salary sacrifice into super? Do you look at making additional after-tax contributions to super? Should you start drawing a pension income? Do you need insurance? How can I structure my wills? I've got, we've got a family with, kids from one marriage and a second marriage, and things like this. So we've got a pretty complicated family situation, and I want to make sure that everyone's looked after. I want to be able to leave money to an organisation, or I want to be able to donate money tax effectively to an organisation. How do I do these things? How do I go and invest for my kids? All these things, they're all strategic advice issues. And so you don't actually need, product advice, and you can get strategic advice that will take care of those issues for you. Some of those, though, may lead to product advice. Not all of them, but some of them will. And so, are you looking for assistance with that as well? Or do you want to just take the strategic advice and go and find your own way? That's something that you've got to answer for yourself before you actually start going and looking for someone to talk to. For some people, where you need to tick things off and you need to go through it's going to take you a few years to get things organised. You may want someone to actually hold you accountable. So, in my training, in my running, I have a running coach, and he sets out a plan for me every week, and we have key targets and things like that. And he will go and check up on my progress and see how I'm going. Advisors, or some advisors, also work like that. Not necessarily every week, but there will be regular meetings and regular check-ins to make sure that you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, if that's what you want. And so just knowing that someone is looking at that, knowing that you've got someone who's standing over you and is going to ask you, have you done that, can actually help you do it. I've got a business advisor as well, and the same thing works. Same thing works with him, where when I've got a meeting scheduled with him, I'll always go back and have a look at what I was supposed to do as a result of the last meeting. And oftentimes there'll be things that haven't yet been done, but knowing that I've got that meeting, I'll make sure I get those things done. It's just because he's going to hold me accountable to that. And as a result of that, I actually get more done and I'm much more productive because I'm focused on getting those things done. In some cases, you may want someone to provide you with reassurance. And, that can be, at times of market dislocations, when the values of investments are moving around and things like that. It can also be at significant moments where, you might be coming up to retirement and you want to know that things are going to be all right, that you do have enough that you can actually stop working. It may be that you want to go and put the kids through private schooling, and yet you still want to go and run the 6 marathon majors, and you want to be able to step that out over a number of years. And you want to know that you can do the 2 of them without compromising your other long-term objectives. And so someone who can go through that and work through those issues for you and calculate what's needed to do that, and then show you a plan to be able to do that. That, the reassurance around that can be something that means a lot. Maybe you just want someone to simplify your affairs and save you time. You might be in a situation where you say, look, I just don't have time to deal with it all, or I don't have the inclination. I just want to be able to understand what is being done, what the strategic plan is, and I want to basically outsource that. I want to be provided with updates on how things are progressing and what's being done. And I want to be able to review that on a regular basis to make sure that, that things are continuing to be done as we discussed. But ultimately, if I can find someone that I trust, I'm happy for them to just look after it. And, as I say, we can review that and make sure that things are being done. But, I'd rather just spend my time on other things that are much more enjoyable or much more productive. Whether that's running my business or, or my profession, or whether it's allowing me time to go and train for that Ironman, or, whatever it is that you're working towards. Whether it means that you've got more time to spend with your family, whatever it means. But that can be something that is a key thing that many people look for as well. So you need to identify what it is that you're looking for out of a relationship with an advisor, and whether that's just something, as I said, some strategic advice initially, or whether there are other things that you want with that as well. So having worked out what you want, and I suppose the other comment with that would be, sometimes it's not actually possible to work out what you want in advance because you don't actually know what needs doing. But if you've got an idea in your head as far as how you would like things to be done and what you would like to do, then at least you've got a starting point. So it may be that you've got a lot more issues that need to be resolved, or there's a lot more opportunities that can improve your situation, but that needs to be worked through over time. And so that may change your ideas of what you need as far as that relationship. But as I say, having determined what it is you think you're looking for, how do you go and find it? And this is, this comes back to the issue that we were talking about at the start, where, look, there are plenty of good advisors out there who are providing really good advice and really good service to people. But, unfortunately, all the stories that we're hearing at the moment are about the bad ones, because, one, they are horrific, and two, there seems to be quite a number of them, and obviously they sell, they do sell newspapers. Because the stories are so bad, they make really good copy. So, how do you look behind that? How do you cut through that to find someone who's going to be able to help you? So, if we look at the basics, what do you need to check first before you actually go and meet an advisor? So, look, the first thing is to understand who's actually giving you the advice, and making sure that they're licensed to give advice, because there's a lot of people out there who will talk about giving you financial advice. Whether it's real estate agents talking about investment property, and that's talking about investment advice, but it's not necessarily financial advice. and there are a whole range of people, as I said, who kind of skate around those issues. Yeah, you need to understand where they're coming from and what they're actually capable of doing. So the first thing is to make sure that someone who is providing you with advice holds an Australian Financial Services license. They either need to hold it directly, or they need to be an authorised representative of someone else who has a license. Now, these licenses are granted by the Australian Securities and Exchange Commission, or ASIC, and you can go and check on the ASIC website. There's a list of everyone who holds a license or is an authorised representative of a licensee, and you can go and check to make sure that they are actually authorised to give advice to you. And that should be one of the first things that you go and do. Now, I've got to say, a lot of things in this this list that I'm just about to share with you, they're all contained on a document called a Financial Services Guide, or much of the information is, and that's something that any prospective advisor needs to share with you before they give you advice. So the second thing is, look, what are their qualifications? For instance, I'm a certified financial planner, and pardon me, I'm just going to take a drink of water. So, as I said, I'm a certified financial planner, and if you look on the FPA website, that will tell you that a certified financial planner is the highest financial planning designation worldwide. So as far as that goes, that's kind of the highest standard. There are other levels of qualification or certification, but you need to understand who it is you're dealing with. And you need to understand whether they can provide the advice you need or not. It's no good going and seeing someone who only provides advice in relation to insurance. If you want kind of holistic advice that covers off on a number of areas, whether it be superannuation and investment advice, tax structuring, possibly a self-managed super fund and estate planning, and things like that. If that person can't provide that advice, you want to know that up front before you start wasting your time. So understanding what it is you're looking for, and then understanding what advice they can provide. The other thing is, if something comes up in that initial meeting and it says, or it's a red flag for them that this is outside the scope of what they're able to advise on, how do they deal with that? Do they refer you on to someone, a colleague or someone else that they know who's able to provide that advice? Do they bring those resources in-house on your behalf and go and find that for you? So, understanding what the process is in that case, because no one is going to be able to know everything, and no one's going to be able to deal in all those areas. And what experience do they have with people like you? So I know that the people that I deal with these days, a lot of people who are in the endurance sports community understand that they can talk to me because I know what their issues are and I know what their priorities are. I remember talking to someone and they told me that they went to see an advisor and spent a whole lot of time going through with them what they wanted to do. And the big thing for them was they're both triathletes, and the lady's husband was an Ironman triathlete. And she told me that they've got a budget of $10,000 a year for triathlons. And unfortunately, what happened was when this advisor came back to them with the advice, he told them, "Look, you can do everything you want. All you got to do is cut in half that budget for Ironman." And it just wasn't what they were after. So you need to know, do people do they understand you? Do they understand people like you? And do they have experience dealing with people like you? Are they a member of a professional body? So, for instance, the Financial Planning Association or the Association of Financial Advisors, both of which have a a code of ethics that you've got to sign up for as well as being part of that. Are they members of them? Have they or their licensee had any regulatory or compliance issues? And that's another thing that you can search for on the ASIC website. And if they have, that can be a red flag or a potential red flag for you. Obviously, you need to understand what the issue is there. But being forewarned is certainly forearmed in this case. So if you've gone through that and you've decided, look, I've got a short list of people that I want to meet, and that's probably the other thing is, don't just settle on one. Look for a short list, 2 or 3. You can look for referrals from people, but from people that you know. But again, that's not necessarily going to ensure that you do get good advice, because as I said, sometimes people can't distinguish between good and bad advice, and they go on the fact that they like the person that they're dealing with. So but that's certainly a good start. If someone's been working with someone for an extended period of time, then you would like to think that they've been able to weed out any of those issues. So referrals are certainly a good starting point. There's also a Find an Advisor tool on the Financial Planning Association's website. You can look for people like that as well. So there are a couple of really good starting points. But as I said, having narrowed down that short list, or come up with a short list and then decided to go and meet them, what do you want to find out during that initial meeting? What are some of the key takeaways that you need to walk out the door with, so that you can make a decision on whether or not you want to work with that person? Firstly, do you feel comfortable talking to them? Are they interested in you? Because I guarantee you are different from every single one of the clients that they deal with and the people that they know in some way, shape or form. We're all individuals, and there'll be nuances, there'll be goals, there'll be a way you like to do things, or some plan that you have that's going to be different to everyone else. And they need to learn that, and they need to understand that in order to be able to provide advice to you that's going to meet your needs. But the only way they're going to do that is by asking the right questions, and by asking about you and wanting to learn about you rather than just your money. So, where do their interests lie? Do their interests lie with you as a person and what you're trying to do, your fears, your goals, your family and the relationships and the things that you want to achieve? Or are they just interested in your money? Are your values aligned? So, when you're talking to them, do they see the world the same way that you do? If you're a workaholic and you work 80 to 100 hours a week, and your focus is on building your business and building your wealth, and that is the number one priority in your world, then if I start talking to you about your values and what's on your bucket list and what do you enjoy doing outside of work, you're not going to get along with me. But by the same token, if you've got those same sorts of ideals and you've got a life outside work, and doing other things is really important, whatever that is, whether it's endurance sports, whether it's philanthropy and volunteering, whether it's your family, whether it's travel, whatever it is, if you've got those things that you want to be able to do, then you need to work with someone who shares those and who understands how important that is to you. Because only then, that's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for you to, it's going to shortcut the time it takes for you to explain yourself, and they're going to understand and recognise the importance of those things because they share those goals, and they share those views. So that's probably the second thing. Are your values aligned? What are their costs, and how are you charged for things? So, for instance, are they going to ask you to sign some sort of cost agreement or some sort of letter of engagement before they go and start providing you with advice? Now, this can be daunting in some respects because you're kind of looking at them saying, well, I've only just met you and I don't really know what you're going to be able to provide me and what you're going to be able to do for me, and yet you're asking me to agree to some fee. Now, I can understand that, but can I tell you that often that's actually a really good sign if they ask you for a fee up front. Because what's the alternative? I suppose looking at what a good advisor needs to do to be able to provide you with advice, it actually takes a lot of time. So one, there's that initial meeting with you, and then there's the follow-up from that. They need to get all your financial details and they need to analyse those. And they need to come up with strategies that are going to get you to where you want to go and do all the things that you want to be able to do. Now, that doesn't just happen magically. There's a lot of time spent on developing models and things like that so that they can see, well, yes, this path will work. And if it won't work, well, what alternatives are there? And then they can come back to you and talk about, well, whether or not you need to adjust your goals or adjust your expectations. But there is a time involved in doing that, and then actually providing you with formal recommendations and formal advice. They're big documents that get put together, and there's a lot of compliance that needs to be done as part of that. But it all takes time. Now, if someone's doing that without charging you for it, effectively what they're doing is they're producing a document that they're hoping to use to convince you to become an ongoing client who pays them fees. So that's not going to always work out, though. There's going to be some instances where people just aren't going to like or agree with what they do, or with what the recommendations are, and they're not going to go ahead, which means they've invested all that time and money into doing all that work and they've not received anything for it. So the alternative then for them is to do a job that's not necessarily as of such a high standard, and they can cut some corners, or they can focus on things that have a product solution that they can be remunerated for, or they can make things look a little bit better to try and convince you, to get you over the line, so that you come on board as a paid client or a paying client, and then they can change things as they go over time. So, like I say, while it can be difficult to agree to pay for something without actually knowing what you're going to get, it can actually be a good sign. But I wouldn't actually ask. I wouldn't expect anyone to pay money for something without knowing what they're going to get. And I think a good advisor can actually explain what they're going to do and how that's actually going to meet your needs and what you're going to get out of it. So you shouldn't be asked to walk into something blindly and just lay a checkbook on the table. The other thing is, though, if it does turn out that you don't, you've paid this money or you've agreed to pay this money and you don't think that you've actually got fair value in return, or there hasn't been enough value in what you've been given, how do they approach that? Is there some sort of mechanism there that they'll work with you to ensure that you ultimately do get the value that you're after, and it is a fair exchange? So, do you understand what that is? Is there something like that in place, or is it just a case of, well, look, sorry, that you've paid your money and we've given you the service that we give out to clients, and that's just the way it is? You need to understand that. Okay. What's their investment philosophy? If you're asking for investment advice, you need to understand how they actually go about making investment recommendations and what stands behind them. There's a lot of academic research that's available, and there's a whole bunch of really smart people who've won Nobel Prizes because of the research they've done into investments and investment markets. And you want to know, what has your prospective advisor done to inform their views about investments and markets, and to help them make their decisions, or what are they basing their decisions on? And the other thing is that as part of this, you want to know that they do have a coherent philosophy, and that they're not just making decisions on individual investments on a case-by-case basis, but rather that it fits into an overall plan and an overall structure. So that's kind of the danger that that it's very easy to fall into, and a lot of people do that when they're building their own portfolio as well, where if you look at what the so-called mum and dad portfolio is comprised of, and it's basically a lot of big companies that have demutualised. So, whether it's IAGs, Commonwealth Bank, Telstra, AMP, and companies like that, they're kind of the staples in many people's portfolio, and they're just things that they've picked up over time. But you wouldn't say that there's an underlying philosophy that's guided that. It's more just been as an opportunity presented itself that sounded good. And so you want to know that your advisor's not working that way. You want to know that there is something that's anchoring their decisions and something that they can refer back to, particularly in times of market troubles. Because markets do go up and markets do go down, and you want to know that they do have something to refer back to, some kind of touchstone that they can and you can rely on to make coherent decisions when times are tough. What services do they offer as well? When we go back to that list of what you need and what you're looking for, do they provide just strategic advice and that's it? Do they just provide investment product advice or just insurance advice? Do they provide it as a one-off? Do they provide ongoing services? What do you need? So you need to know all these things. Some businesses focus just purely on doing one thing and doing it very, very well. And if that's what you need, then that's great. Some other businesses focus on providing kind of comprehensive advice that covers off on multiple different areas that all interact with each other. And if you've got needs that fall into those areas, then you're more likely to benefit, or it might be simpler for you to use someone who does do all those things rather than trying to identify different businesses for each different component. Who do they associate with as well? Most businesses can't do everything that you will need. And even when they can, who do they use for all those different parts? So, do they choose to find people who are the best at what they do, or provide services that are equivalent in standard to what they provide? What do their associates reveal about them? There's the old saying: if you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. And if you look at the people that they refer to and who refer to them, and if they would make you uncomfortable, then that should be a bit of a warning sign and a red flag that you may actually not want to deal with them. So, I remember my parents at one stage saying, your friends are, you become like your friends. You become like the people you associate with. So, again, who do they associate with? Who do they refer to? Who are the other professionals in their network? And what tools do they use? As I said, when we're talking about developing advice and what goes into that and why it can cost, do they use the tools that are available, or do they just go with their gut? And think that this makes sense, because when things go wrong, or when investment markets turn down and things like that, you want to have something that you can rely on, that you trust. So if there's long-term projections and long-term modelling that takes into account the ups and downs of investment markets, and you've looked at all that, that can give you a lot more comfort than someone just saying, "Oh, look, this is just the way it goes." We've seen it all before and we'll see it all again, and markets go up and down and you just got to stay in there for the long term. Or, we looked at things and basically it makes sense for you to go and salary sacrifice into super and pay off the home loan and things like that, which may well be true, but you want to know what are the different options and how does that play out over 20, 30 and 40 years, and is there a better way of doing things? And tools can be used to illustrate that, and to provide you with the with the basis for the recommendations, to be able to share the basis for those recommendations with you. So, not necessarily important which tools they use, but more the fact that they are there, and it's not just a plan drawn on the back of a napkin. And lastly, what value do they provide for their advice? Are they actually able to explain that to you? So, one of the things that we've put together for clients, or for prospective clients, is a document that talks about the value of the advice that we provide. And there's 10 benefits that we go through that clients receive when they receive advice from us. But anyone who is in the business of providing advice should be able to demonstrate the value that you are going to receive from that. In some cases, there can be really obvious tangible benefits. So, when there's tax savings because of a particular way of structuring things, or when there's fee savings on investment costs, or when you're looking at long-term investment or long-term potential investment returns as a result of moving money just from cash into some growth assets, taking a little bit more risk, and that might or that should result in better returns over the longer term. You can identify those that degree of value, but there's a lot of other intangibles that sometimes it can be harder to understand, and they can be just as important. So how are you going to understand what that is, and making sure that they do share that with you, and you're comfortable with the value that you're going to receive. So they're kind of the main points. And I say, to summarise, what's really important is that you need to know what you're looking for to start with. There's no point just going out and thinking that I think things could be a little bit better, and I'm not real sure whether my finances are on track or anything like that. So you need to know what it is you're looking for, and where do you go from there. And so we spoke about that. We also spoke about the questions that you need to ask yourself around the type of advice that you think you need, and the sorts of services that you might need. So whether that's just strategic advice, and that might be enough to get you to the next stage, whether there is actually some product advice that you need, and what areas that falls into. Whether you want someone to be able to provide you with reassurance, or someone to actually hold you accountable and make sure that you hit those things, those goals that you've set or you've identified are important to you. So what is it that you're after? And then we've spoken about the checklists and the tools and things like that you need, the questions that you need answered before you decide to work with anyone. So, we've got some tools, as I said, that we've put together to help people to work through these issues. So, the first one is, it's a checklist for what to consider when you're selecting a financial advisor. And you'll see on the first page there, we've got those pre-screening basics, the ones that I went through, which is around, qualifications and licensing and things like that. But we set out much of what we've gone through in today's webinar in that document. We've also set out this the 10 benefits that people receive from the advice that we provide. And so this is an example of what you can expect, or what you should expect to see from a prospective advisor, someone who is actually able to share with you what it is you're going to get out of working with them. So this will give you some ideas on what's possible and what the benefits can be. And as I say, you can use that to check against what you're being told and what they're speaking to you about. And lastly, we've often had questions around what is an investment philosophy, because it's not something that that a lot of people have spoken about or have even thought about. In terms of their investments, or in terms of consulting with an advisor. So, this is the investment philosophy that we work to, and this is what underpins our investment decisions. And so, again, we provide this as an example of the sort of thing that you should be looking for when you go to meet with a prospective advisor. And it's something that Yeah, this is a fairly simple thing. I've seen ones that that run to 20 pages, yeah, and can include a lot of research and things like that can be shared with you. And certainly there is a lot of research and things like that. But like I say, this is a kind of basic summary, and this should be something that you should be looking for. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your attendance. It's been great talking to you, and look, I'm more than happy to take any questions, or feel free. You can get in contact with me after this as well if there's any specific questions that you might have. The tools that I've just shared with you, they will be on our website, and you'll be able to download those, or as I said, friends or family or anyone else who is looking for some advice, they can certainly go and download those tools and use that to go and find an advisor for them. So, look, thank you. As I said, thank you very much for your attendance. As I said, there's the details of the website. And if we don't have anyone with any questions, then we might call it there. So thank you. I'm Dave Hazelwood. I'm the founder of Knightswood House, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks.